Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Balancing Act makes Indonesia an emerging markets darling. Virginia's Youngkin aims to bolster mental health care, part of national focus after the pandemic. Finland's new president enters NATO era just as Trump shakes the alliance. The Israeli military says it has rescued 2 hostages from captivity in the Gaza Strip. Australian bonds fall ahead of US inflation data, markets wrap. Balancing Act makes Indonesia an emerging markets darling. Bloomberg. Indonesia's upcoming presidential election is of significant importance due to the country's geopolitical and economic balancing act between the US and China. The new leader will need to continue pro-business reforms and attract foreign direct investment, while also managing the risks of a Chinese economic slowdown. Indonesia has been a boon for emerging markets investors, with its stock market outperforming many other markets over the last 20 years. However, a change in leadership raises questions about whether this can continue. The new president will also need to address the challenges of the middle-income trap and navigate a steady retreat from emergency policies implemented during the pandemic. The outcome of the election will determine whether Indonesia can maintain a balance between the US and China and continue its trajectory of growth. China's economic difficulties have had virtually no impact on the rest of the world, as international markets have recognized that China is an isolated problem. China's specific issues, such as real estate and regulation, do not hinder US growth, and it is not at the forefront of the secular tech theme that has powered markets ahead. China's decline has also helped limit producer price inflation and contributed to optimism that interest rates can come down. While a serious decline in Chinese economic growth would spill over across the world, at this point, the issue appears to be restricted to financial markets and sentiment. The lack of demand for yuan and China's de-dollarization efforts further limit the potential for contagion. Overall, the rest of the world can enjoy the year of the dragon as long as China can ward off a major economic recession. The new Indonesian president will play a crucial role in maintaining the country's delicate geopolitical and economic balancing act, while China's economic challenges have limited impact on the global economy. Virginia's Youngkin aims to bolster mental health care, part of national focus after the pandemic. Associated Press. Virginia's mental health care system is in urgent need of reform, according to the administration of Governor Glenn Youngkin. Patients experiencing mental health crises are being sent to hospitals across the state, only to find there are no beds available for them. They are then kept in emergency rooms, sometimes for days, while waiting for treatment and being watched by police officers. John Clare, the police chief of Marion, Virginia, said his officers were against the wall. The state is trying to build a system that allows people to get the treatment they need in their own community, instead of in hospital, but there are concerns about the pace of reform. The Right Help, Right Now initiative, which is backed by advocates, aims to deliver same-day help to people in crisis and increase the number of mobile crisis teams with clinicians to respond to emergencies. Virginia had more than 20,000 temporary detention orders in the 2023 fiscal year, according to a recent presentation to lawmakers. Finland's new president enters NATO era just as Trump shakes the alliance. The Sydney Morning Herald. Centre-right politician Alexander Stubb has been elected as Finland's new president in the country's first national election since joining NATO. Stubb will be responsible for foreign policy, during a time of shifting geopolitical order and increasingly fraught relations between NATO and Russia. The president will play a significant role in determining Finland's position within NATO, which has been met with threats from Russia. Stubb has expressed his desire to bolster transatlantic relations, and has taken a tough line on Russia. The Israeli military says it has rescued 2 hostages from captivity in the Gaza Strip. Associated Press. The Israeli military has conducted a raid in Rafah in the Gaza Strip in order to rescue 2 hostages, marking a small but symbolic victory in their efforts to free over 100 captives believed to be held by the Hamas militant group. The raid resulted in at least 7 deaths and included airstrikes, flares, and Apache helicopter fire. Israel has described Rafah as the last remaining Hamas stronghold in Gaza and has hinted that its ground offensive may soon target the city. The White House has warned Israel not to conduct a military operation against Hamas in Rafah without a credible and executable plan to protect civilians. The hostages were identified as 2 Israeli citizens who had been kidnapped by Hamas militants in October 2014. The Israeli military has said that over 100 hostages remain in Hamas captivity, and they are one of the main goals of the war. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has vowed to press ahead with the military offensive until a total victory is achieved. U.S. Defense Chief Austin in hospital again, weeks after secret medical stays. South China Morning Post. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has been hospitalized due to symptoms suggesting an emergent bladder issue. This comes after Austin previously kept 2 stays in the hospital for treatment for prostate cancer a secret. The public was alerted about Austin's hospitalization 2 hours after he was admitted, and it is unclear how long he will stay. Austin had previously apologized for concealing his cancer diagnosis from President Joe Biden and the rest of the government. The undisclosed hospital stays and the current hospitalization come at a time when the U.S. faces ongoing crises in the Middle East and Ukraine. Despite calls for Austin's dismissal, Biden has expressed confidence in his defense secretary. Lloyd Austin hospitalized for a bladder issue but will continue to carry out duties as defense secretary. Yahoo! U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has been taken to hospital for a bladder issue, according to the Department of Defense. Austin will continue to carry out his duties while at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Washington, with Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks prepared to take over if necessary. Austin underwent a procedure in December for prostate cancer, which resulted in a bladder infection and abdominal problems. He recently apologized for failing to inform the White House of his hospitalization. Defense Secretary Austin hospitalized with bladder issue, but retaining the functions of office. Associated Press. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was hospitalized on Sunday due to symptoms related to a bladder issue, according to the Pentagon. Austin, who was diagnosed with prostate cancer in December and underwent treatment, was taken to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center for treatment. He is said to be retaining his functions and duties while in hospital. Austin had not informed President Joe Biden or other officials of his cancer diagnosis or initial hospitalization for weeks, which is now under investigation by the Pentagon's Inspector General. Austin back in the hospital with emergent bladder issue. Yahoo! U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin has been taken to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center with symptoms of an emergent bladder issue, his spokesperson has said. Austin's security detail transported him to the hospital Sunday afternoon, according to the statement. This is Austin's second hospitalization for urinary tract issues this year. At this time, the secretary is retaining the functions and duties of his office, Air Force Major General Pat Ryder said in the statement. The deputy secretary is prepared to assume the functions and duties of the Secretary of Defense, if required. Austin has been recovering from a severe urinary tract infection that developed following a procedure to treat prostate cancer late last year. Russians attack Kharkiv with missiles. Yahoo! Explosions were heard in the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv on Sunday evening as the Russians attacked the city. The Air Force reported a missile threat in Kharkiv Oblast, and early reports indicate that the strike was carried out with S-300 missiles from Belgorod. There is currently no information on casualties. The facades of non-residential buildings were damaged, and an inspection of the strike sites is ongoing. Well, folks, it's been quite a week in the news. From Indonesia's delicate balancing act to Virginia's mental health care crisis, and from Finland's new president to the Israeli military's rescue operation in Gaza, there's certainly been a lot to digest. Oh, and let's not forget about the latest developments in the US and Australia, with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's hospitalization and the anticipation of US inflation data. Now, let's dive a little deeper into these stories. Indonesia's upcoming presidential election is crucial for maintaining its delicate geopolitical and economic balancing act between the US and China. The new leader will need to continue pro-business reforms and attract foreign investment while navigating the risks of a Chinese economic slowdown. Meanwhile, China's economic challenges seem to be contained within its own borders, with limited impact on the global economy. In Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin is pushing for much-needed reform in the state's mental health care system. The goal is to provide timely and appropriate treatment to those in crisis, but there are concerns about the pace of reform. It's clear that urgent action is needed to address the current shortcomings and improve access to mental health care. Over in Finland, Alexander Stubb has been elected as the new president, and he will play a significant role in shaping the country's foreign policy, particularly in relation to NATO and Russia. Stubb has expressed a desire to strengthen transatlantic relations and take a tough stance on Russia. It will be interesting to see how Finland's position within NATO evolves under his leadership. In the Middle East, the Israeli military has conducted a raid in Gaza to rescue 2 hostages held by Hamas. While this is a small victory, the larger goal is to free over 100 captives still believed to be held by the militant group. The situation remains tense, with Israel hinting at a possible ground offensive in Rafah, the last remaining Hamas stronghold in Gaza. The U.S. has urged caution, emphasizing the need to protect civilians. Shifting our focus to the financial markets, Australian and New Zealand bonds fell as selling in U.S. Treasuries continued ahead of key U.S. inflation data. This data will be crucial for the Federal Reserve's next moves, as it determines whether inflation is transitory or more persistent. All eyes will be on the numbers as they could have significant implications for monetary policy. And finally, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has been hospitalized again, this time for a bladder issue. This comes after he kept his previous hospital stays for prostate cancer treatment a secret. It's certainly been a rocky road for Austin, but he continues to carry out his duties while in hospital. Let's hope for a speedy recovery for him. Phew, that was a lot to cover, but I hope you enjoyed my take on these stories. Now, it's your turn. What are your thoughts on these events? Do you have any questions or insights you'd like to share? The floor is yours, my friends. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.